sugar burner, and yes, you have to bleed to find out. Do you still want to know?
It doesn't hurt when
It's gonna feel like a pricker. With your finger.
You have a volunteer.
Hold on, I'm not done with Wendy yet.
Hold on.
Would you like to know how effectively your body is using carbohydrates or fat as fuel? Perfect. There we go. Okay, so let's take your blood glucose first. No, let's just go right to the fat. Okay.
Now, what's it gonna say if I had a glass of wine this evening? that could be skewing it, right?
It's gonna tell us if you're drunk.
It's gonna tell us how good if your wine has a lot of sugar in it. Nope.
Was it white or red?
No,
White.
With my ham soup, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Thank you.
Okay, all you have to do is put that on your. You want me to do it?
Probably.
Okay.
Okay, I can handle that.
Squeeze your finger. Okay, whoa, that's good. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, start with the biggest wimp in the room. You guys can. Will I stop bleeding now? Do you have enough? Because I got mine.
I'm like, you didn't see the middle of my shoulder for the MRI.
It's in the shape of a heart.
Oops.
That's how far it's stuck out of my chest.
Need some more?
Nope. Your level is non-detectable, which means you are really high in sugar. You still have it?
Yeah.
Okay, hold it.
Non-detectable.
Which I'll get to that. Do. Okay, we're good. Okay. Remember that number.
I love that number.
107. Okay. Let me sneak in here. All right, one more. Does anyone else want to try? You want to try, Henry? Okay.
I have a bad example, but I'll do it.
I'll do it.
I've got coffee and cheese today. That's what I have.
That might not be a bad thing.
Come
Come on up, Henry.
I'm okay.
You don't want to try it?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. You want to try it?
David, go on.
Okay.
I'll try it. Stay with you.
This should sit up here.
Okay.
Oops, wrong thing. I'll explain to you why this is important in just a minute. Go ahead, let me see your finger.
Which one? New one?
Point to the one that you want me to prick.
And then look away quick.
Squeeze your finger gently together. There you go. You have thicker skin than Wendy. There you go, that's good. Good. When's the last time you ate?
7 in the morning?
Okay.
Wow.
How come?
School.
Okay, he's 69. Remember that number. Okay. Excuse me. You want to do it too?
Sure.
Okay. So we're going to go to a couple minutes late because we're doing this. I wanted to let anyone try this who wanted to. While we're doing this, I'll start this video because this is a couple minutes long. This happened last time. What was happening? What was happening? Someone was running.
In serial killers, I used a whole foods high-fat diet to hack my genes in a quest for better health. This time, we're moving into the world of elite athletic performance. For 40 years since the concept of carbohydrate loading was developed in Scandinavia, the research was done starting actually in the 1930s in Denmark, but the Swedes, in the 1960s and 70s, did superb research showing that you need carbs to do high-intensity performance. We've all been pushing this high carbohydrate line for 20, 30 years, and no one's ever really questioned it.
In my day, the magic ingredient was you had to do the carbohydrate loading diet, and then you also had to try and do 100 miles a week. That was the magic thing, 160 Ks a week, and you were then sort of into world-class training.
I was eating extremely low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet for 15 plus years, and I thought that's the healthiest and the highest performance way of eating. Well, I was doing pretty well in sports, but I basically became pre-diabetic.
We now understand the limitations of low-fat, fat-free diets, that they're not necessarily healthy at all. Many athletes are doing this, quote, in a closet, because they don't want to have to explain to people why they're doing something that almost all professional nutritionists tell them is wrong. And the second reason is if a competitive athlete is doing this and is getting really good results, and there are many who have, they're not about to give away their advantage to their competitors, because this is something that is giving them an edge in winning. Sami Inkinen is a world Ironman champion. He's fueled by whole foods, he's a fat-adapted athlete, and we're here to tell his story.
The catalyst for me to explore a lower carbohydrate diet, or at least start paying attention to the mountains of processed carbohydrates that I was eating, was twofold. First, I think it was 2009, I was tested at Stanford to see whether I burn fat or carbohydrates for fuel when I'm exercising. What they found out was I was a highly efficient sugar burning machine, which is okay if you're racing 1 hour or maybe up to 2 hours, but anything longer and you quickly run out of fuel, glycogen, carbohydrates. So that was the first catalyst for me, just for performance reasons. The second motivation for me to really pay attention to the mountains of carbohydrates that I was eating was really for health reasons. This was a couple of years ago. I realized my fasting blood glucose values were actually pre-diabetic, and I also started reading much more books about the effects of sugar and processed carbohydrates in our diet on our health. And the more I started reading, I realized that maybe the low-fat, or in my case almost zero-fat diet isn't the healthiest way to live. And then gradually I totally changed my diet and the way I eat.
Do you want eggs?
Eggs and spinach, and then avocado.
Oh, you got guacamole. Nice.
We typically do our morning workout pretty much in a fasted state. Maybe have a cup of coffee, maybe a little bit of dark chocolate in
Definitely
there,
have a cup.
basically no food before we go running or whatever exercise we might do.
When I first met Sami, I was a strict raw foodist, and I was a raw foodist with him until I got into cycling. And Sami had convinced me that if I was cycling with him that I needed to be eating lots of oatmeal and sports gels or else I would bonk. I would hear it quite often. He would be nagging me like, you need to have something to eat. You need to eat some oatmeal. Or you need to have a gel. You're going to bonk. And so I got totally guilt-tripped into eating that way. And from the minute I was eating the gels or the oatmeal, I would feel terrible. And I would always tell him, like, if he had me carb load for a race, I was just going to be like, I feel so terrible. I'm never doing this again. And then he would convince me the next time I needed to do it. And yeah, that went on for a couple of years.
Here's pretty much a typical post-endurance workout meal. Real whole foods. This is a lot of eggs and spinach. People often think that if you work out 1, 2, 3 hours a day that you have to be sort of carb loading after your workout. But if you're well fat adapted, this is the kind of diet we follow and haven't had any issues in working out day after day and even doing some high intensity workouts.
Sammy Inkinen adopted the principles of Steve Finney, the author of The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Performance and one of the most controversial voices in the world of nutrition.
My peers think that I'm a heretic. They can't understand why I would persist in standing by data that is so contrary to what everybody wants to believe.
I feel very sorry for Steve Finney, who's been a pioneer, who's really been ahead of his time and has not got the recognition that he deserves. And as it turns out, he's been right for 30 years, and the rest of the world has been wrong.
I like the way that's you can watch the whole movie on YouTube, and it's really eye-opening. And I like how. Hold on, let me get going here.
What's the title of the movie?
Run on Fat. Serial killers. Like cereal, like C. Okay? So I like how it ended because that's a really good book. So if you are an athlete or if you know an athlete, you should buy them that book on Amazon for $10, and then you should buy them this book. This is by Ben Greenfield, Low Carbohydrate Athlete. The most important thing that he brings up there is the science has been telling us for 30 years that carbohydrates aren't necessarily the key to high performance. And most people believe, I've been asking people all day, do you believe that if you're going for a long, high endurance exercise program or a big run or you're training for a marathon that you should have more carbs or less? And most everyone said more, because that's what we learned. Okay, and we have all learned, even back when I was in high school, before the big game, we would go over to Coach's house, and what would we eat? Spaghetti.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're going to... Did you guys do this? No? Because you'd carb load, so you'd give yourself a whole bunch of excess carbs so that you didn't bonk. You guys heard that term bonk? So you learned a new word today. It's when your body's running on sugar for an extended period of time and then the sugar goes away, you have this crash. Okay? So top athletes around the world, most Olympic athletes, lots of professional athletes are now hacking into these secrets that the average person doesn't know about because it just hasn't been mainstream for 30 years since this type of eating pattern was developed. Okay? So it wasn't necessarily developed 30 years ago. It's the way that our ancestors lived before us. All right, now we're using that for athletic performance, and we're seeing amazing things. Like you saw, these ultra marathon runners are eating virtually no carb diets. And what happens is that they don't bonk. So they don't have to reach to do a gel pack every 30 minutes when they're running their marathon because they have long sustained energy throughout the race. Pretty interesting. So what would that mean for, a high school athlete who's in a football game and you're running both sides or you're out on the field for the whole game? When everyone else gets tired, guess what? You have more energy reserve and you can just keep going past everyone. Tom Brady. You guys know who Tom Brady is? This is a Tom Brady diet right here. He's very secretive with what he does, but any high-level athlete has their stuff together, and it starts with their training protocol, and then second comes their diet.
I believe LeBron James is on it.
LeBron James is also on a keto diet. Yeah, low carb. You guys ever see how shredded that guy is?
Basketball player.
Basketball player? Okay. So why might you consider choosing a low carbohydrate diet for athletic performance? Some athletes are trying to lose weight and they can't lose weight because they're working out so hard, and their coaches and their trainers are telling them, you can't eat enough food. Just keep eating. Because you're working out so hard, just keep eating. It's not always the case. Sometimes people are trying to cut and get to that level where they want to be, and they're not able to get there because they're eating too many carbs and their body's storing those carbs. Athletes wanting to improve their health or longevity, this is a really cool thing. When your body runs on carbohydrates or sugars, it produces more free radicals. I know Wendy knows about free radicals. Free radicals are a byproduct that gets spun off during cellular respiration and breaking down sugars for energy or carbohydrates for energy. And we now know that free radicals, the more free radicals in our body, the faster we age and break down. If you get your body burning fat for energy, you produce far less free radicals, and you actually enhance your longevity and your productivity of cellular energy. The third thing is athletes who have reached the plateau and they can't get over there where they need to get for their goal. So consistent low performance. And number 4, athletes who have gastrointestinal problems. When I was in high school and college, we used to just drink protein powder all day long. And it really hurt all of our stomachs. And you guys know this, like, I mean, even, am I speaking your language? Yeah. You ever get a stomach ache after you have a protein shake? Every time. So your body is sensitive to what's in those protein shakes. Okay? Who should not consider a low-carb diet? If you're training for an event and you're in the heat of your training, it's not a good time to switch. So you need to really focus on this before you're going into season or before you're getting run your marathon. Not say, oh yeah, I'm running a marathon in 3 weeks. You think I can fat adapt and do well? I'm going to say, no, you definitely can't. You'll have a terrible experience. Athletes who are block training, so really intense preparation. And the third thing is anyone who doesn't have a gallbladder or cannot metabolize fat. You pretty much know who you are. So this would not be a good strategy for you, unfortunately. Some athletes who have had gallbladder or pancreatic issues can still do this. It just needs to be done in a different way or monitored more closely. So here's an interesting slide I put together for you this morning. Here's the typical athlete diet. This is what we're telling athletes to eat. 50 to 60% carbohydrates. I mean, these are refined sugars, essentially. 20 to 30% protein and 20 to 30% fat. Here's the higher fat diet that lots of athletes are using now. They're flipping it. 50 to 60% fat, 20 to 30% carbs, 20 to 30% protein. I'm going to give you a couple tips on percentages towards the end. Now, here is a select group of athletes like that ultramarathon runner that you saw and his wife. They're entering into a state of ketosis, which means they're 100% fat adapted. So if you eat a meal that's high in carbohydrates and you go out for a run, eventually the carbohydrates are going to get all burned up, right? And when the carbohydrates get burned up, then your body goes into reserve and it's looking for carbohydrates that you've stored. And then if those get used up, then it will go into fat reserve. But unfortunately, most athletes or people who are exercising are never going to get into the fat reserve because their body's going to shut down long before it gets there. Because the body can't go from running on gasoline like a car. You can't flip a car from gasoline to diesel while you're driving down the road. You'd have to convert the engine and make it then efficient to run on diesel. You see where I'm going with this? So it's the same thing with the body. So there is a reserve of carbohydrates or sugars in your body called glycogen. And when your body's done with the carbohydrates, it looks for glycogen, and after that, you get that bonk or that crash. Okay, so these athletes are training their body to run on fat for fuel so that when they get to race day or game day, their body instantly just converts right in and starts looking for fat storage in the body. It's a magical process. And these are why some people just keep going and going and going, because they can dig deeper into their fat restores. All right, fat burns like coal, sugars burn like matches. So that's the main reason why athletes are now tapping into this. I don't recommend this for people, but I recommend this for people. Okay? To be fully fat adapted can take an athlete somewhere between 6 months and a year before they really get into their zone and can start running these marathons and these athletes that we see watch on TV. 6 months to a year. You could probably fat adapt for day-to-day life in somewhere between 1 to 3 months. I've seen people take longer. The average healthy person who has healthy cells, who's not very toxic, can probably get to a fat adapted state in somewhere between 4 and 5 weeks. Pretty interesting. The other interesting thing is that athletes who are trying to enhance their health and longevity, carbs produces inflammation, carbohydrates and sugars. Okay? Fats don't. So if we keep our body running on fat, we don't have the inflammation. Because we know that when we're training, we're producing inflammation. When you go to the gym and you work out, you're inflaming your muscles so that you can repair stronger. When you're doing that with carbohydrates and sugars in the system, it keeps the inflammation on longer. When you're doing that and you're fat adapted, you can process and heal and recover faster. So here's the basic food overview for what an athlete who is working on fat adaptation is going to eat on a regular basis. High fat coconut milk, coconut shavings, avocados, olives, extra virgin olive oil, macadamia nuts, pumpkin seeds, walnuts, sardines, salmon, cheese, heavy cream, whole fat yogurts, wild game, and grass-fed beef. It's just a sample. This is pretty much what my house looks like right now. So who's ever heard that any of those things are bad for you, like whole fat yogurt, heavy cream? Have you guys heard this before? Yes, and we've heard that because when you mix that with sugar, you get a nasty little concoction, and you get this fermentation process that actually keeps you running on the sugar, and then it has all this fat for reserve, and then we get this really awful imbalance. But if you don't add sugar to all of this stuff, your body starts using it and processing the fats for energy, and it keeps you running like a lean, mean, fat-burning machine. Okay? So this is what the basic food overview looks like, and this is what these athletes are eating on a daily basis. Notice there's no grains there. So you're eliminating all grains. If you're a high endurance athlete, you're adding some grains back in. I'll kind of give you an example of that on this slide. So here's the proteins that we're using in conjunction with the wild game and grass-fed beef, eggs and chicken, and then here are the clean burning, easy to digest carbohydrates that these athletes are using. Sweet potatoes, yams, rice, quinoa, amaranth, millet, and berries. That's it. All right. So if you're high endurance and you're training for a triathlon or ultra marathon, you do have to have some carbs. Okay, especially when you're preparing for race day or game day. These are the types of carbs that they're using. Low inflammation, clean burning, and they don't irritate the system. Okay? Pretty interesting. These are the grains that we add in: quinoa, amaranth, and millet. These are ancient grains that aren't genetically modified. They're very gentle on the digestive system. They don't give us the same problems that things like wheat gives us. Cool? Here's the keto food pyramid. The word ketogenic or ketosis means you fully fat adapted. So let's go to our numbers. Okay, what was your number? 56.
81.
81.
107.
Wendy had a glass of wine before she came in. Oh, you didn't do it? 68. Okay. Generally speaking, normally we wouldn't do this test unless you were in a fasting state. So what's a fasting state? At least 12 hours. So he might be pretty close to a fasting state. If he hasn't eaten or drank anything since 7 a.m., that's a pretty accurate number.
And he's noon.
And he's noon, so he's 6 hours. He's not fasting yet. Fasting state. Okay? But what this is telling us is that if your blood sugar level is over 110, 110 is pre-diabetic. Okay? So you fast for 12 hours, eat your last meal at 7 o'clock, take your next reading the next day. 12 to 15 hours, maybe in that range. Take your next reading at noon the next day. That's your fasting blood sugar level. If it's around 100 or up into 110, you're pre-diabetic. If you get over 110, you're in that diabetic range. All right? These guys are putting up low numbers because they're young and their cells are just, they're pumping out. They don't have hormone changes. They don't have toxicity load like someone who's twice their age, and they're really in that adaptable state. As we age, we lose that adaptability, and thus we train our body to get back into that zone. Okay, so here's what we need to understand: the lower your, and this is like an advanced keto class that I teach, the lower your blood sugar level, the higher the ketones go. Here's why that's important: your brain can run only on sugar. Your brain has to run on sugar. You can't run on any other source. All the rest of the cells in your body can run on fat or sugar. When you're not putting sugar into the body, your body has to convert fat to a ketone. It breaks down and metabolizes fat in the liver, makes a ketone, which is a form of usable sugar energy for the brain. but it makes it through fat production. Okay? So when you have low, sustained blood sugar levels for a period of time, I tell people somewhere between 50 and 70, you test for ketones, and your ketones go up. When your ketones go up, you know that you're fat adapted. You know that your body can go from sugar or go from fat and just keep maintaining that high energy. And that's what these athletes want. Make sense? So how can that play into your day-to-day life if you're not an advanced or extreme athlete? You can have much more stabilized energy prolonged throughout the day when you're fat adapted, right? It'll blow your mind what'll happen to your body when you get fat adapted.
Your brain is actually sharper too.
Your brain turns, it's like you're feeding your brain what it really likes, and you're not polluting it with inflammation and carbohydrates and sugars. Okay? Make sense?
Yep.
So here's what the basic food pyramid looks like. Meats, fats, and oils and things are all down here. That's the majority of this. I would flip some of this around, but this is something that I grabbed. You don't only want to eat meats because meats are proteins. Remember, you're supposed to be getting 20 to 30% of your diet from protein, and 50 to 60% of your diet from fat. So I would put avocados, certain organic cheeses, eggs, oils down closer to the bottom, and a little piece of meat over here, and then I'd eventually go up to berries. But I would also put vegetables down here, and I'll teach you.
What's that worm with a heart on it, bottom middle?
That looks like a shrimp.
Oh.
Okay, this is a quick one.
Hey guys, Dr. Berg here. Listen, I wanted to do a video on...
This guy's great, by the way. If you've never watched him.
Endurance athletes and ketosis. There's been this huge debate of should I do carbo loading when I exercise? Should I do high fat? There's a lot of confusion. There's a recent study by the Journal of Physiology that I put a link down below. It's fascinating, actually. They compare doing a low carb, high fat with a high carb, low fat diet. And there's one other group too, which is kind of in between. But this is what they found. They found that these athletes burn 2.5 to 3 times more fat than the other group. That is significant. So they became fat-burning machines. Also, there was significantly lowered glycogen usage, because the concern is that you're going to tap out your glycogen or sugar reserve and end up with fatigue and muscle weakness. But that did not happen. Now, the idea that energy only comes from carbohydrates is absolutely false. You don't need to do the carbo loading. Now, there were mixed reviews on some of the studies that showed that you're going to get better performance with higher carbohydrates. If you actually read the article, you're going to notice that a lot of these athletes did short-term ketosis. They were not fully keto adapted. If you're an athlete and you jump into this ketogenic diet too fast, you're not going to perform well because your cells have not adapted. So the study that I'm going to show you below, it revolves around athletes that have been doing it for over a year or more. So in the future, if you see some conflicting data, make sure you read the article and see if that athlete was really keto adapted over a longer period of time, not a short-term.
So the cool thing is that he touches on that if you need a burst of energy, you're going to get it from your carb. If you want sustained, prolonged, high energy levels, you can fat adapt and you can really change your outcome for your performance. Okay, so this is an example of lunch. This was my lunch today. And there's no carbs. I mean, there's a little bit of carbs from these nuts, but there's virtually no carbohydrates here. Okay? When you get your body fat adapted, you have to eat less, but you're eating a lot more calories because you're getting your energy from fat. Has anyone heard that the more fat you eat, the higher your likelihood for cardiovascular disease, heart disease? Trust me when I say this, it's wrong. It's only when you're eating high fat and high sugar that you're going to create that mess. But if you're eating high fat, low sugar, your cardiovascular scores are actually going to increase. Okay? It's a tricky little thing. All right. Here's some examples of hard to digest sources: eggs, bacon, cheese, and yogurt, and meats and nuts. These are good things. We want these, but they're harder to digest. Here's the easy ones to digest, and let me talk about this for a minute. So this is a collagen powder. Has anyone ever used collagen powder? Good. This is what you're going to use to support all connective tissue in your body. It also has lots of protein in it. Okay, this is really easy to digest because it's put into a form that is already partially broken down and ready for your body to fully absorb. These oils that I use, you guys see these up front, really easy to digest. You guys know that Andreas, the founder of these, he cured himself from Crohn's disease by using these oils and eliminating carbohydrates from his diet. All right, coconut butter. If I get hungry, I just eat a spoonful of this. Okay, it has 9 grams of saturated fat in it. 9 grams of saturated fat in 1 tablespoon. That's a lot of fat. But when you get your body running on this stuff, you don't have to eat sugars and carbs. MCT oil, medium chain triglyceride oil, gets absorbed by your system so fast, it bypasses the digestive system and gets absorbed by the liver, and your liver can then metabolize and break it down as energy. Okay? You have to start slow with this stuff because it can flush you out if you start too quickly with it. Got it? Henry, if you are going to use protein, if you used hydrolyzed whey protein, it's partially digested protein. You won't have those stomach aches like you've had before. Hydrolyzed whey protein, essential amino acids powder, and then hydrolyzed collagen powder. Electrolytes. So Gatorade, I read a lot about Gatorade in the past week. You guys know that it's full of sugar. And I've heard over and over again that, what'd you say? That's why it's delicious. Have you heard people say, don't drink Gatorade unless you're a high-level athlete and you're really, pushing yourself for several hours? Yet people, they drink it all the time. If they go for a walk, they drink some Gatorade. They drink it for the electrolytes. But the caveat is that it's loaded with sugar. And if you get the no-sugar Gatorade, it's full of nasty sweeteners that are going to make you really sick, like aspartame. Okay? So here's the deal. Your body does an amazing job at balancing electrolytes. There's been studies where they take marathon runners and they run them like crazy, and your body has a magical way of keeping your electrolytes in balance. It was a big racket that Gatorade put out to promote sales. Okay, so they take high endurance athletes and they monitor their electrolyte levels in the kidneys and the ureters, and the whole system is monitoring and measuring your electrolytes. So you really don't need to get electrolytes from Gatorade. Okay? Has anyone ever started sweating and their sweat is like really salty? Or ever went for a run and then they had sweat all over and then they dried and then they could see salt crystals? Oh, yeah. That means you have too much electrolytes. Armpit stains means you have too much electrolytes and your body's trying to dump them. And people are thinking, I need more, and they keep drinking and they're actually stressing their system even more. Interesting. So if you have salty or spots on your clothing, sometimes you'll see someone went for a run and you'll see it'll dry, it'll be like a white ring. Your body's dumping electrolytes because there's too much. It's trying to keep balance. Okay. Most cramping comes from fascial adhesions, lack of mobility, muscular fatigue, scar tissue from previous injuries, and low hydration. So what's the solution? Drink water. And drink lots of it. Okay? The last thing, and then I'm going to let Wendy talk to you for a minute, is I have 8 supplements that can help you perform better. You guys might find this interesting for school. And I'll go through them really quickly. I have a copy for everyone. So if you're not doing endurance training, you don't need this stuff. But because that's what our class is on today, I included it. Okay, so there's 8 little tips on here of things that can help us. So sodium, when you get fully fat adapted, your body starts dumping sodium as it's burning out all the carbohydrates. So your body does start dumping some sodium. Rather than having Gatorade, you put a little bit of salt in your water, and it helps balance your sodium levels out. One of the things that people notice when they start fat adapting is they get lightheaded, and they go through this keto flu period where their body's trying to find and start burning energy from fat more efficiently. Blood pressure drops down. People get lightheaded and they get kind of dizzy. Almost always, not every time, but 80% of the time, if you add sodium back into the diet, salt in water, and have them drink it, good sea salt, it'll fix the problem. Second thing is branched chain amino acids. These guys are rapidly absorbed into the bloodstream, and we need amino acids to build muscle and keep that prolonged muscle firing patterns in place. Whole amino acids, the lucky number here is 5 to 10 grams before long vigorous workouts. Glutamine, so this helps with glycogen synthesis. So after your glucose is all gone, if you have some of this stuff in the system, glutamine, it helps your body get on top of the glycogen and keeps your body running strong. Taurine helps athletes use carbohydrates effectively when they're present. There's been studies that have helped the body is more useful of the carbohydrate when that amino acid is present. Medium chain triglycerides. These athletes who are keto adapted keep this in their pouch, and they'll do a tablespoon an hour. So a tablespoon an hour, it's coconut oil base essentially. They'll do a teaspoon an hour while they're exercising, and it'll go right into the liver and start getting used right away as energy. Magnesium to help with muscle twitching and sleep aid for recovery, and that's why I have this here. Magnesium at night for athletes helps with that. And then this last one, I think you guys will like this. This is called Vespa. Vespa is an amino acid. You can buy this stuff. It's from wasps, like wasps. They've extracted it from wasps. And what it does is when wasps are out flying around doing their thing, they sometimes have to travel miles and miles and miles, little tiny insects. And they don't have much carbohydrate or sugars available to their system because their system needs to run on sugars as well. And this amino acid is found in wasps, and it helps keep them running and flying longer distances when they need to. So athletes are using this stuff. Pretty crazy. Okay? So take-home message is especially for you young guys in here who, I mean, you guys are in your prime for exercise and athletic performance. If you implement some of these things into your life, it can absolutely massively accelerate your athletic performance. And then for everyone else, you can implement these same strategies in your life, and you can experience the massive change in energy levels, hormone balances, as well as sleep patterns, decrease inflammation, decrease aches in joints, arthritic pains. We're really just scratching the surface. So follow me on this. The ketogenic diet that I just briefly touched on, it's super in right now, and I might even call it a fad, and it'll kind of go away. And the reason it'll go away is because people aren't going to do this right. They're not going to do it right, and they're going to try and hack the system, the body system, and they're not going to get the results that they want. Okay? So when it goes away, don't think that it's not useful. We're just telling you right now that's what's going to happen. Yeah. Yep. You heard of the Atkins diet? The reason it's no good is because it's too high in protein. And protein stresses the system. And you're never getting your body into that fat-burning mode. So you're essentially starving your body from carbohydrates, but you're not fat adapting. So you can't sustain that way. You can't only eat meat. Okay, people had all kinds of problems with the Atkins diet, which is why it went away. But it went away because you were never getting into that fat-burning mode. And the fat-burning mode is sustainable, and you can live your life like that. That's what our ancestors did. Okay? So Wendy's going to talk to us really quickly about a product that she uses. We're going to be using this product on our fast that starts the first week in May. And Wendy's going to talk to you why this product might be good for athletic performance.
Do I need the microphone?
For the Facebook Live.
Okay.
We'll hear you better.
So, okay, thank you.
There you go.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. So, right in line with a lot of the points that he pointed out is this cellular healing technology. The company is called ASEA. It comes in a liquid that we take, and also a topical gel for direct, like, oh my God, my knee is really aching. I need to pinpoint this area. This is a concentration of this technology, which is redox signaling molecules. And the short one-mouth sentence of the science of it is our mitochondria make, this is native to our body, make these redox signaling molecules for cellular detection, protection, repair, and replacement. And as we age, we produce less mitochondria, therefore we produce less redox signaling molecules, therefore we have less cellular communication. It takes elderly people much longer to heal that hip that they fell down and bruised, right? And a 9-year-old or these guys are up, beefing it up again tomorrow. Another thing that ties in with this, with what Andrew was saying, is that in a clinical study they did on athletes taking ASEA, and it was a double-blind crossover placebo study, and the placebo was salt water, which interestingly enough is the ingredients in ASEA, salt water, such as in our cells. And then it's molecularly restructured into bioactive redox signaling molecules identical to what our body makes for the cellular communication. So they did this awesome clinical study on these athletes running, cycling mainly, and kept testing them throughout. And what they found is that the VT max threshold was pushed out a minimum of 12%. So if you think about like the Tour de France race, the difference between first place and 50th place is like this. And they train months and years to make that little tiny thing. And there's no banned substances in this. It's totally legal and safe and 100% non-toxic. And remember, it's native to your body. So the body doesn't have to like eat these blueberries and go, oh, this is good antioxidants and good benefits. What do I do with it? How do I digest this? Where do I put it? What do I do with it? If this is into the body, it's not even necessarily digested. It's absorbed through the mucous membranes. It crosses through the blood-brain barrier, which is a huge thing because the body just like sponges off that and goes, oh, yay, thank you. And we'll prioritize and use this. What else was I going to say on the blueberry thing? Lost that train of thought. Anywho, I have some pamphlets here with some great, just basic information, and there's some contact info on the back. There's a website that I invite you to look at that's not on here. Keep in mind of it or call me and I'll remind you. It's called Athlete Edge, and it's got that clinical study that I just referred to. And any questions? That's all I can think about. Nope. Okay.
That's cool stuff. We're going to be only drinking this on our fast.
That's going to be great.
Anyone who's fasting with us. And what Wendy said, they actually taking salt water and change the molecular structure of it so that your body absorbs it and helps repair, communicate with cellular function. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome.
Oh, take this off.